Thanks for joining us at a moment of silence and darkness as we take a closer look at the 2005 movie Serenity. A bit of a sleeper, but a cult classic that follows the storyline from a TV series known as Firefly, with the same cast and timeline and everything. It follows a couple of years after that. Pretty interesting. My name is John Newton, science fiction author, and I'm joined by another science fiction author, Ryan Schultz. Ryan, would you like to say something about yourself?
I'm so happy to be back on for the third time. I didn't think it was going to happen, folks, but here I am again. We'll see what happens.
You must be doing something right.
Because, I don't know. Yeah, I think that, I would just bring a certain charisma or charm to the podcast. That's like the X factor.
That must be.
I think that's what it is. I know nothing about movies, but it's just
you're not telling the truth.
Charm. No,
you're not true. Yeah, he does, and so we're looking at it from an author's point of view too, taking a look at these movies. So there's a little bit of unique perspective that we're doing it maybe than other movie reviewers are, and this is a bit older, but it is a bit of a cult classic. At least it does have a. Would you say there's a bit of a following for this, or a bit of nostalgia with either this movie and or the series?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, it's such unique circumstances how this movie was even made, because a movie was almost like never made from a TV series that only got one season. That just doesn't happen. Normally it takes several seasons for it to get like greenlit by producers, think that it's like legit. But after the series was canceled, so many people were like up in arms. They wanted another series, but instead they were like, okay, well, we'll give you a movie instead to kind of like make you happy, because there seemed to be such a following of this. And so it's just unusual kind of circumstances, but it kind of worked. I'm glad they did something at least.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of people that were interested in it. So what is Serenity? Here's my take on it. In a universe controlled by the oppressive alliance, Captain Malcolm Reynolds and his crew of misfits are just trying to survive until a dangerous secret is uncovered that could change everything. In Serenity, the stakes are high as a crew is forced to protect River, a mysterious girl with hidden abilities, from a ruthless government operative determined to silence her at all costs. With the thrilling action, witty dialogue, and unforgettable characters, Serenity is more than just a sci-fi Western adventure. It's a story about standing up against tyranny, believing in something bigger than yourself, and uncovering the truth, even if it costs you your very life. Will Captain Mal and his crew stay one step ahead of their enemies, or will the truth they fight to protect be buried forever? Get ready for an epic journey where survival meets faith, and the signal cannot be stopped. Stopped. Okay, I need my echo chamber there.
That was beautiful.
So if you enjoy this type of movie, I guess there's a strange crew of us who might like that. You may like my short stories, available wherever great books are sold, and my novel coming.
How do you do this,
Vanna? Okay, that works.
There it is.
and my novel coming out early next year that crosses both time travel and medieval times. Free copies of the short stories are available. Check out the links in the description. And if you want to get an early release of the novel there, please check out the description below too, because I am looking for as many reviewers as I can to get going. The more that you have when a book launches, the better it does. He's nodding his head because he knows this firsthand.
John, I was wondering if you could sign my digital copy of your book.
Sign your digital copy?
Yeah. Could you do that for me?
I guess.
All
maybe
right, excellent.
Create a EPUB that just has, to Ryan on it. Okay,
yeah.
That's cool. That might work. So, Ryan, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate Serenity?
Okay, so I watched Serenity when I was in high school before watching the series.
Okay.
And I would say it was definitely a different rating then than it is now. So it does kind of have some context of the series. I would say without the series, I would give it like a 6.5. But after watching the series and having that kind of like the context and the characters and that fleshed out a little bit more, I would bump this up to a 7, maybe 7.5, I would say.
Okay. Not outstanding.
Yeah.
But an enjoyable. What did you enjoy about it best then? Spoiler free.
Okay. Yeah. So this movie gave a nice kind of taste of that space opera. Maybe if you're like kind of at that time longing for some like Star Wars type contents, just space sci-fi thing. There wasn't a whole lot out there when this movie came out. Interestingly, there was Star Trek and Star Wars and a couple other things, but this kind of scratched that itch for some people in a unique way. And so I'm always a fan of space operas, and this delivers well, but it also having still very much so a character study. That you had your crew, you had your little adventures, everyone had their personality, their space on the crew, what they kind of brought onto the missions and the objectives, and they played really well with each other.
Okay.
I loved the beginning of this movie. The beginning of this movie just set it up so well for the adventure. I think the ending didn't quite stick the landing like I was hoping it would, but there was so much intrigue by how they set things up at the beginning, and I wanted some more of that, but I still got some good stuff that I would say.
So when we get to the spoiler section, we're going to do a spoiler review here in a bit, and then we'll do thematic. Spoiler section, we're going to take a look at the trailer and break things down a little bit, because I think the trailer does kind of a good job at covering the entire story. But as we do, maybe you can bleed in some of those things that you were talking about, why it was hit as a good start. I would also give it a 7. I was kind of thinking about going a little bit lower. It is a little bit campy, which is okay. If you know that going in, you expect it, right? It is, the graphics are early 2000s. They're not the best, but if you know that. So I grew up with the Tom Baker Doctor Who. And if you want to talk about low budget props and special effects, you hear stuff in the background, all sorts of things that are happening.
Sure. And
you push that off, and you just enjoy it for and
that'd be an interesting conversation. How much special effects and props, like how much can that detract from storytelling, and how much can good character and storytelling overcome like a lot of that stuff?
That's a good point, because if you're watching a movie or a show, not even generally science fiction, but just in general, and if you really love the characters or maybe the story or humor's a big thing too. That'll carry you through, and you'll be forgiving a lot of other things that are in there.
Almost similar to the video games in many regards. Like people can just get on board with a game irregardless of the graphics.
Okay. That's true. So if the game is good enough, and in this case, what would you say that really drove it? Was it more the plot, or was it the characters that carried this through?
I would say the characters were definitely the strong suit. Very much so if you are coming from the series. I think for someone that wasn't, it could have been a little overwhelming, because there were like a fairly large cast of I think there were 7 people on the ship this time, as opposed to 9 from the series. So we had 7 people kind of on the ship that you had to get to know very quickly. But they did a really good job of introducing the characters very snappy. At the beginning of the movie, close to the beginning of the movie, there's almost this one shot where they go through the whole ship introducing each character. Yeah. And that was that was very clever. For the time and stipulations they had.
And I would also say that they did a good job of giving the world. One of the hard things about science fiction, we both do science fiction, is that it's very heavy in the world building.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to introduce that quickly at the beginning of a story. And it can be what they call an info dump, where you just get all this information and say, I don't care about this, but it's information that's necessary for the story. So you try to find creative ways to introduce the reader, or in this case, the watcher, to what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And they did it in this movie as a teacher is explaining the short
at the very
history,
beginning. Yeah.
Right. To one of the main characters. And what's interesting about this, what really carries through, is it's not so much focused on that history, because it's pretty quick that what happens with the history, but it's her response, which is more important to it. And so I thought that was a pretty good way of handling it.
Yeah, they were efficient with their time. They knew they had a lot of stuff to carry over from the series, but they inserted it quickly and engage in an engaging manner enough to get people up to speed, but also kind of do honor to the series as well. Yeah. So,
and I think it also is. It's almost like this is the people that would generally watch this, or at least when it first came out, would mostly be the fans of the TV series.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have other people that would come too. So you got two different audiences: those who know the characters, know the world that's going into. So you can't spend so much time explaining everybody or introducing somebody, because it'd be a snoozer for your main core audience. At the same time, you can't just get off and running without doing it too much. So another thing they had at the beginning too, and this is kind of leaning, it's not really a spoiler section, but it does go into it, is they introduce the characters, walk through, give the backstory of the world building, and then they put them on a heist right in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is what these guys are. They're bandits.
Sure.
Right? And so are you rooting for them? There's this whole
the bad guys.
moral gray area there. Right? How do you handle that with the moral gray area?
Well, I mean, they established pretty quickly, even before the heist, like these were good people, right?
Yeah, but they're robbing people. How can they be good people?
But they even rob people in such a way that, like, even that one guy that was like down in the vault, he was like trying to give him advice so he doesn't get fired. Like that's so lovable. Like means of kind of establishing that.
Okay, a little bit of spoiler here. Mal, the captain, the leader of this band of misfits, and it's not Robin Hoods. It's not like they're stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. They're stealing from the alliance.
Yeah, which are the rich.
The corporate, whatever. Okay. And then giving it basically to themselves, which are poor. So but he's down there in the vault with this guy who's basically the guard, and he says, listen, it's got to be the leg shot. And the guy's just, can it just be a graze?
Yeah, it's like
you don't want to look like. What do you say with that?
You don't want to make it look like you gave up too easy. Like you need to get a little bit more of a bruise so you can.
Yeah, so he's working with the guy to make it look
it's
like.
It's great. It's one of those moments that just captures the character so well, so efficiently, and they had a number of times with different characters that were like that. That just was just a masterclass.
Yeah, so there are some other morally gray areas in here. Like there is Inara, who is basically a prostitute, and if you watch the series, this is what's her comforter, or what's her name? The name of the role that she plays.
A consultant? No, not.
They give it a nice sounding name, but basically she's a prostitute, right? And so that's elevated on the same level as the shepherd, who is a pastor. And there's question about, he doesn't really believe the Bible, but he's a pastor, right? And there's some issues that are there. He's on the same level as what she is, and basically, right?
Essentially, and I think the series did a little bit better job in the movie and how they handled that. But even in the series, there was just kind of these moments where, like, wait a minute, like, how is that kind of shake out between like those two? It doesn't quite make sense. But again, Joss Whedon was not exactly known for his like Christian theology, and so
I find that hard to believe. So we're going to be heading into spoiler territory. I'm looking for my spoiler marker, and I do not have it. It disappeared. It unappeared. Just pretend we're going into spoiler territory here for this. So we're going to be digging a little bit deeper. And the way that we're going to do this is a little bit differently. I'm going to show different parts of the trailer, and then we'll comment on that. That way you guys get a little bit more of a taste of what's happening. I'd be curious to see if anybody has actually seen the movie or not. And before we do, we got some comments. So I'm going to delve into the comments here and see what we have. Most space operas are cheap knockoffs of Star Wars. You think that I even knew what that abbreviation was.
Whoa, really so hip.
Because that or software. That's the abbreviation for software. You would think that they would be more high quality out there, especially now that people seem to be tired of Star Wars.
It is definitely.
So I was going to ask you this earlier, and that's a good point that Thomas made. What is the definition of a space opera? You mentioned it several times.
It is interesting because I think traditionally opera, I mean, everyone, when they hear the word opera, they think, singing these kind of like ballads.
Well, they did have soap opera. Is this more like a soap opera?
Well, I think actually the definition of an opera is more of a prolonged story rather than like a song.
Okay.
So it's something that a story that expands over a certain period of time, and there's lots of kind of drama and multiple angles in which the story kind of comes at. It's a much bigger kind of story, and so this takes place in space. So it has kind of created its own genre in itself, and so I think that this can kind of go into the space opera, but at the same time, it's not nearly to the same extent as like Star Wars.
So I would also say a definition of space opera is more character based than maybe plot based, and more. You said a key word there was drama.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be like, oh, so much, oh, she got pregnant. What?
Yes.
It's not my baby.
Yeah.
One of those, like a soap opera type of thing. And it could go really off to that direction, basically having like General Hospital in space. I don't remember.
Yeah. A lot of overlapping kind of like motivations and absurd kind of twists that come out of nowhere.
But in this case, it really kind of was in a bit, but not over the top. I mean, the plot was important. The science fiction was there.
Sure.
It was key to what was going on, key to the plot, and also key to all the mechanisms that they're doing and everything. But you have people, this misfit crew, with counter purposes. Like you have Jane, who is this basic military guy, throw grenades in first and ask questions later.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And then you've got River, who is this supposed
wild card.
She's this wild card psychic that you have no idea where she's coming from.
Where are you going to get when
her doctor brother?
Yes.
And then what's her name?
The engineer.
The engineer. What's her? Cheat sheet.
Kaylee. I think it's Kaylee.
Yes. Let me bring cheat sheet up. Kaylee, you're right. She's so sweet. So she got her, and then you got all these different people with different, not only different backgrounds, so they see the world differently, which is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Counter to each other sometimes, and they all have their own motives.
Yeah.
Right. So for you as an author, do you see that as being a mix that you bring into your story?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, I spoke in the kind of the previous, when we did the series, like this type of storytelling and the characters that overlap and have different objectives and personalities, but somehow need to operate on the same ship is just, I love that. And I base
they have to work together.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a hierarchy and there's butting of heads. And it's just so fascinating seeing how each character is going to act in this scenario. And you really want everyone to be there to see kind of what they bring to that kind of different situation and how each one can kind of contribute and conflict with each other, but ultimately work out. It's so interesting. And it's really where I got what motivated me to start writing this whole idea.
Really?
Yes.
Was this inspirational? This movie, this story with you?
I saw the movie first, and that wasn't necessarily it. It was when I watched the TV series after the fact, is what kind of like really solidified it. But the movie was kind of like a nice kind of cap. Okay. That kind of brought it to kind of a nice head conclusion, whatever you want to call it.
And I would say that the character chemistry in this movie and series are different than the character chemistry that you would see like in the original Star Trek or even Next Generation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And see if yes, formal.
Oh, okay.
And I was going to say Stargate also has some really good SG-1.
Oh yeah, that would have been
because you got Teal'c and you've got oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. Oh, somebody's going to clarify this for me. Anyway, Daniel, and you got everybody there. But they're military. They have to work together. They signed up to do this. They have a certain contract together. There's military bearing. This group is always on the verge of splitting up.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, you have some characters in there that want to get rid of some people.
Sure.
They want to dump them, right?
And early on, they almost got rid of River and the Doctor. That was the plan, to leave them at the planet. And it was a great moment where like Kaylee was just all upset and like preparing them. Like I was so invested at that point. Like it was just so interesting to see where it was going to kind of come come about, but they ended up coming back on the ship anyway.
So I'm going to ask you a question. We will get to the rest of the comments, and we will get to the trailer here in a minute. But I'm going to ask you a question about this. What do you think really made this series successful in the people, the viewers, the fans, saying, hey, how are we really want to see this continue. We don't want to see this stop. Why did they do that?
Well, I think there was a lot of unfinished stories, a lot of unfinished kind of like directions the TV series was going. And I feel like they were so on board with those characters. They kind of fell in love with their journey and who they are and how they relate to one another. There was just like, there's no way you could leave it. So
like I would say that I agree with you 100%, but I would also emphasize to say the direction, what they're looking for to say, hey, we need to hear more of this, wasn't the plot. It wasn't like what happens next. It's like what happens to these people next.
Yes. I think so. And this would be an interesting one to do kind of a study on the actual plot and motivation that happens specifically in this movie. Because the main character really isn't on board with the main objective until almost the end of the movie, which is really weird.
Right.
Like Simon, her brother was the one kind of moving it forward for the majority of it, but before like Mal, the captain, even got on board. And it almost like annoyed me to some degree, because I do think how he got on board was a little bit of like, I don't know if I could quite buy that, like what kind of happened plot wise, but there was a lot of forgiveness just because like his motivation and character had not fully been like fleshed out, because he was kind of he's a cowboy. Like he didn't really have that like sense of purpose like some of the other characters did.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. He just wanted to survive. He just wanted to go with the flow.
Day to day. Yeah.
Yep. All right, so taking a look at, we've got a lot of comments here. I want to make sure that we hit everything, or at least most of them. Jack Ray said, I watched Serenity before I watched Firefly series. I didn't even know of the series when I watched the movie. That was the same with you.
Same with me, yeah.
Yeah, and they said that Disney vampired Star Wars. They sucked all the... we'll have to support. This is, even before they did Star, you see them doing this with a lot of the smaller franchises they pick up. Even... Remember how big Pixar was? Is you just waited for the year that they would come out the next one. But they did have a plan, like Bug's Life, and they would do Toy Story. They would have all these plans very early in the beginning.
Sure.
And then Star Wars got them, and the creativity just dried up like a husk. Now they're still producing some things, right?
It seemed like there was so much more intentionality when it was like spread out, and it was with a smaller studio, and now it's kind of like the bigwigs got them, and they kind of gobble up. I mean, they realized like, oh, we're not making as much money with our movies as much. So let's use these established brands, these IPs, and really try to squeeze as much as we can out of it. Yeah. And rather than going with the slow, deliberate, meaningful route. Because I remember when Episode 1 came out for Star Wars, it was huge. Yep. Oh my gosh, it was so fun.
Now, Episode 1, you mean the original Star Wars, or are you talking about like the
actual episode? Yeah, the prequels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wasn't around when the original Star Wars trilogy came out. John,
I was. I'm not going to talk about that right now.
Well, there wasn't as much hype. I mean, maybe for like the second and the third original trilogy, there was some hype for it, but
it's huge.
Yeah,
even the first one when it came out, they had it was
really
the original. Oh yeah,
blockbuster. I thought it was almost people were like, what is going on with this?
Well, originally, but it really took fire. You had people around the block.
This
is when people actually went to this place called a theater, and they sat in this room together. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me more. Go on.
Not any. Okay. So yeah, it was huge. It was big.
Yeah.
I had seen it 7 times when I was a kid.
Oh yeah. Oh, I would have loved to have been.
So anyway, long story. We talked about it before. But your point is that you do have what with this? That Star Wars has basically sucked the life out of this franchise and a bunch of others. I don't know if I were them, I think I would have sat down. I want to see what you guys think about this. If you were a huge, now you got to make money as a studio, right?
Yeah.
But I think that I would take this group of guys and say, men and women, and sit them down and say, listen, got you these brand new studios, or maybe you're using existing studios. We're gonna give you guys what you need, but not everything, because sometimes it's through
Scarcity comes innovation.
Yes. And with that, but just try to keep that creativity going.
Yeah.
Maybe cycle through a little bit, but it's almost like a hands off to say, we'll give you donuts and we'll slide pizza underneath the door for you to keep feeding you.
Put them in a dark room until they.
But yeah, it's to see what happens with it. Okay, so pick up another one here. Jack Ray said Robin Hood was stealing from what was government and giving to the poor. Yes. And your brother in Christ said pastor equals hooker. Yeah, they really. What? Well, no, it's talking
he
about.
Wasn't a hooker.
No, but they're putting him on the same level.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They both provide a service. It's an emotional service.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Wisdom, guidance of some
And she
some
did
kind.
too.
Yeah.
She had she was Buddhist or something like that, giving incense
Letting
and
these
stuff like
candles,
that.
Yeah.
And I'm providing the service, and it's almost like a counselor that you go and talk to her about your problems and have sex with her, and then talk about your problems some more. And then once you're done, it's like, you pay me, okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. And she really didn't have many flaws besides she wasn't a very good fighter. They kind of kick her butt during the fight scenes, which I appreciated. At least back in the day, they recognized that women were not as strong as men.
Female character all the time. Firefly and Serenity seem to be more like a space western rather than space opera.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's been called that. That you do have, because they're on the edge. They're on the wild frontier. And technology, if you have it, you have it, but you can't go to the local Home Depot and get your latest equipment.
And I think with the operas too, especially Star Wars and Star Trek, there was this huge world that was brought into these small characters where this story still stays fairly small within itself. Now, the movie did bring the Alliance more into it. And so you're starting to get a little bit more into the opera, the big kind of world kind of coming to these people.
Yeah.
But in Star Wars, that was the big picture stuff was always an important factor.
I think part of that had to do with, because you're also in a series, you have to pump them out a lot faster. These episodes, and it's lower budget, so you can't necessarily do the bigger picture.
Sure,
but that allows for intimacy when you're just focusing on those.
And I love the mystery of the Alliance in the original series. It was kind of like this almost mysterious force that was kind of in the background that had a lot of power, influence, but you didn't quite understand a lot about them. And even with Star Wars, they do that a little bit, but almost they show more with the Empire. And it kind of removes the mystery from it, and then it kind of is oh, okay.
Well, I'll say watching the original Star Wars with the first three, and the Emperor, having him come in and do his thing, he was very mysterious in background. You don't see him in the first.
Sure,
one, right?
Yeah.
He's not in the first,
which is good.
It's number 4, New Hope. You do see him later on, but he's still until the third movie where he's. Go ahead, give in to your dark side. One of those things, right?
Yes.
So there is the mystery there. Thank you, Jack O'Neill. That's what I was looking for Stargate.
It's Jack O'Neill.
Yes, yes,
it just came to me.
Yeah, very good. No clue was given to you at all. And movie theaters were a lot smaller then too. I remember the huge lines.
Oh
yeah, they would go around, especially for some of these movies. And people would talk to each other when they stand in line too. They have cell phones,
you build the community there. So I got that a little bit growing up, but not nearly, I'm sure, as it once was.
Jack Ray said Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, 1977, started a sci-fi craze. The James Bond movie Moonraker, 1979. I remember that. I did see that in the theater. Road off Jaws. They had I forget his name, the giant guy. He had the
the grill.
Yep. was made to write off the craze. Also, Universal Studios wanted to captivate the same audience that Fox, 20th Century Fox had at the time, and they wanted to do the same thing. So you know what their version of Star Wars was?
Fox?
No.
Oh.
Fox did. I'm pretty sure Fox did Star Wars. Now I know they owned it. They eventually sold it. I remember if they did the original. I'm pretty sure they did. But Universal Studios, their version of Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Now you weren't around then, but I'm just saying. And I don't even know if you know this.
I may not.
It was a series.
I don't want to embarrass
myself. Okay, TV series. All right, I'll let that hang. Let's see if anybody in the chat is older than I am, so be able to put it in. And then, RPG gamers, welcome, brother. So these are all to say. Now we're gonna go over. Finally,
are we gonna get the trailer?
Yes,
John,
yes, we are.
Okay,
we are gonna do it. We are really gonna do the trailer. Battlestar Galactica. Yeah. Hit the nail on the head.
I have seen Battlestar, but not the original. I know.
The remake, the reboot is not even close to.
Really? I thought the remake was pretty good. Besides the weird like
dark.
90s sexy weird
yes,
stuff that
yes,
was
there. There were some good parts to it.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting. Their take on it. It was basically a reboot. It wasn't continuation.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I did.
78, I think 79. Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they did. I remember seeing Universal Studios tour. They had a Battlestar Galactica thing that you go through. It's a ride with the tram. Go through that.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember that as a kid. Okay. A little bit more, and then we will hit the trailers because I want to make sure these guys get some airtime here. The reboot was a dreary drama, boring.
Wait, for Galactica?
Yeah, there was.
I mean, I got to see the original, so I guess
there was. The Cylons were kind of creepy with that one.
Okay,
but and the special effects in the 78, 79 version of Battlestar Galactica wouldn't match what we have now. But I think there's more of a down home, homier feel to it. It wasn't as dark as what the new Battlestar Galactica was.
The remake felt like a social deduction game, which I don't know if how much we're gonna get into board game stuff, but like I don't know if the original kind of had that, like who is like the secret Psylocke, if did it have that as well?
Cylon?
The who was the infiltrator amongst
it was Baltar. It was Baltar.
Okay.
And they knew it, and they did there was some real vibes of Mormonism in it.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because I think Lauren Green, who played Commander Adama, and he was on Bonanza.
Yeah, that was great.
He was a great guy. He was a great actor, but I think he was also a Mormon too. Okay. And there were some other things that came in where there's some of the theology. They got Children of Light. They got really weird there with some of I think the second season.
Yeah.
And they had Battlestar Galactica 1980. Okay, off topic. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. We got off topic here. Usually don't do this, but let's see. Let's see. We had back up. Buck Rogers. I had a crush on Wilma. I think not the original. I don't think you're talking about that one. I think we did a review on Battlestar Galactica. I think yes, we did, and I will put the link right there when I'm done.
Why do I always do that wrong?
I don't know.
It's just
yes, darkness in the reboot was a repellent, especially if you're familiar with like this first Starbuck that was in there. It was a guy.
Starbuck. Yeah,
was a dude. Not she. In the reboot, it was a woman. She kind of
butch. Yeah.
She was like this strong female character. Always had to prove herself. But the original Starbuck was always like he was a gambler. He was kind of a rogue,
like
kind
a
of
Han
character.
Solo type.
Yeah, but he was a part of the group, and he would try to get away with things. But he was a good friend. He played. There's another guy who played the straight man, but. Anyway, and then that same actor did A-Team. He was on A-Team.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and then played the board game.
Yes, the Battlestar Galactica board game is excellent. It has a social deduction element. We could do a whole thing on board games, but that's probably for another channel. Like,
well, look at the guy's name. Look at the guy. Sorry, not him. Look at the guy's name.
I know. Yeah, the RBG gamer. Okay,
yeah,
let's DM me. We'll talk board games.
Yes,
all right.
Yes. So
I would love
I didn't
to
even know if they had that game. You would love to see what?
The trailer.
Dirk Benedict, thank you.
Well,
I'm going to continue with the chat.
What's the title of this live stream, John?
Dirk Benedict, he played lighthearted roles. Yeah, he was a good guy. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Is this the moment? Do we need to get to a drum roll?
I don't think I've done a live stream where we got this far off before.
Come on.
I don't know. You're never coming back. Okay, so let's take a look. This is the movie Serenity. Have you heard of that?
Oh, is that what we're talking about?
So the movie Serenity. And we're going to just take a look at the trailer because I cannot really get clips from the movie itself. We'll just ride.
Y'all got on this boat for different reasons, but y'all come to the same place. So now I'm asking more of you than I have before. As sure as I know anything, I know this. I aim to misbehave.
Trailer.
Yeah, it was a double trailer.
You're like, take this, right?
That's right. We'll do it again. Okay, so you just get a little bit, and that guy who's speaking is
Captain Malcolm Reynolds.
Yep. And so you get a bit of a taste for saying, hey, he's trying to motivate the people to do this, and he's shoot it from the hip type of thing. Play it. He never knows the next day what's going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
He aims to misbehave. Like, what kind of a motivation is that?
Yeah. So there are some good now listen carefully, because we're going to get into Christian themes, and maybe you guys can pull out some Christian themes in here too. But can you really do this with a crew of misfits that aims to misbehave and they're bandits? But there is something that they're trying to do that comes into this. It's not just going around robbing people. You only see that at the very beginning.
Yeah,
I don't think you ever see another case of that here.
No, not in
the movie.
Have another heist. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at this next one.
I'm taking your sister under my protection here.
The only people she's a threat to is us on this boat.
Okay, so you see some of this fighting and this infighting in here with her. Something about this girl. They're being chased. A passenger with background. So who is she? What are they talking about?
It's River.
Yeah, and what's the deal with her?
Well, we don't really know. That's the whole, even the series just kind of acts weird, has these kind of moments where she acts out. And that's the whole mystery of the TV series. And in this movie, this is the question they intend on answering. Because there was a number of routes they could have gone, I think, with what answers they wanted to give the audience for the movie. But probably the most pressing one was the question of River and what her deal was.
Because she was always a mystery they alluded to in the series.
Yes. Even from the very first episode, she gets introduced, and it's just kind of this really like mysterious figure. They had some assumptions of who she was, but then it turned out they were wrong. And it is a really interesting plot device to have like this kind of like brainwashed female that has these crazy tendencies being kind of the MacGuffin, if you will, because she is a character in herself and has kind of her own motivations. And it's an interesting trope to use, I think, of all the things that motivates them.
So reading another comments here. When I heard about Nathan Fillion, Captain Reynolds, it's, if I spell his pronounce his name,
yeah,
right,
that's right.
When I heard that he was a bit of a pompous jerk, I have a difficult time watching him now. Oh, you know what? That sometimes happens.
Oh, like the actor?
Yeah, when you find out about them in real life, maybe really strong political views or really strange nature, or I think arrogance is what turns people off to a lot of.
I think so. I really try to watch movies without out of my mind for the most part and just let the story speak for itself rather than trying to bring in the politics of the actors and the history behind them. Like in some cases you can't do it, but in others, like I'm trying to actually just consume the story that's presented to me right there, rather than the background stuff.
Right.
Typically.
Right. Well, Thomas Hall said another thing too. He says, you could say the same about Joss Whedon, who was the director.
The director, yes.
For this.
He's had an interesting history as well.
Yeah, and try to divorce the art from the artist.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's probably a pretty good approach to.
I think so. I mean, you can dig up stuff about anyone when it comes to the art that they create, and like sometimes maybe that's relevant. Maybe especially if it's like a biography or something like that, they're speaking about their own history. Maybe there's something there. But for the most part, I try to isolate the story from whatever the background stuff is.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at another trailer.
It isn't safe. They're coming.
I think we better go.
So there's two sets of bad guys in this. There's the Alliance, which
Oh,
tends to be oppressive.
yeah, the civilized.
And then you've got what's the other group? The
Reavers.
The Reavers.
Yes, the
And
zombie
what's-
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Reavers are interesting because they are this almost like zombie, like they don't seem to have a motivation. They just kill, and that makes them, scarier in many regards. And they just, they just perform evil. Like there's just an evil. They have no motivation. They're just pure evil. And they have a certain amount of capabilities. They have ships apparently that they can still run. Somehow they're able to like function.
Yeah,
to
so
some degree.
that
That's
somehow
interesting.
thing I think was a weakness in the plot. We do find out later. I don't want to be too spoilerish, I guess.
I thought we were in spoilers.
There we are in spoiler territory, but I guess I wonder. Okay, so basically they've been zombified. These people have, right?
Yes.
And but they work together in this almost hive mind,
it's interesting.
and they're
They don't
able
really
to
explain it.
maintain their spacecraft. They're able to dress themselves and
Work
modify
together enough
things.
to function. Yeah.
Yet they're cannibals, and all they did is basically,
Yeah.
I don't see how that's possible, and I lost credibility when it came to
Well,
that.
they're not full zombie. I think like they're like half zombie.
They don't act like that in the
3/4
movie, though.
zombies. Well, there's a couple of moments, even in the movie, where you remember at the kind of towards the beginning where they pull the guy off of the shuttle, and they're like, "Oh, we got a live one," and then Malcolm shoots him, and then they're like, "Oh, he's dead, bummer." So there's some type of
Did they actually speak?
Well, no, but they clearly made a gesture of disappointment. So there's some type of an awareness there.
So,
It's not really
yeah,
established, but
Yeah, that's where I think there was a weakness there. I don't know if you could really work around it too much, other than say maybe they'd be more like warlike, maybe like a Klingon culture or something like that. Instead of just a flat out zombie, eat brains.
yeah.
brains.
Mhm.
So that was an issue there. Now there was some mention earlier about the Alliance, and this wraps into a theme that I'm going to bring out later. Is the Alliance is oppressive, and according to River River Tam, who is this psychic girl that has her. Then there's a question about psychic abilities and stuff like that from a Christian standpoint. So she mentions very early on that people did not like the Alliance because it was oppressive. It tells people how to think. She says that right off the beginning to establish who they are and gives a better light for Mal and his crew because they're independent.
Freedom and
they're free thinkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you have these two groups that are going against them. So let's take a look at another. Oh, we got some. All right, I am going to take a look at the chat, and we'll do another. Clip here. This is from Jack Ray. He says, "When the artist wrecks their work, Fillion in the series Castle, it's hard to avoid." I didn't.
Yeah, he was a lead in Castle as well.
I didn't see that series.
I've not seen it. I heard about it, but I didn't. I don't know about wrecking the work part. I didn't dig enough about into that one.
And he brings up Borg zombies.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say they're
Borg.
necessarily on the level of the Borg.
not quite Borg.
They're not the hive mentality. That's probably a pretty good way to say it. And Star Trek Online game 2010, Borg zombies in it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
And Truth Defender said World War Z zombies were
on crack cocaine.
Basically, they acted like it, right?
Yeah, no, those things were nuts.
So another one, and I think in this one, if I got it right, we're going to see something about a particular character that we've been talking about.
Where are you hiding, little girl?
The Alliance wanted the reason they shouldn't have sent an assassin.
Every minute you keep River Tam from me, more people will die. This was your fault.
I don't murder children.
I do.
Ooh.
The antagonist in this was a great example of a good antagonist to put against the captain.
Why?
Well, he was a complete mirror, an opposite in every way, which was just fascinating when they get to kind of like interact with each other. And the little dialogue they had was just very emblematic of like their motivation and their character. And they they played really well together. And it was really well done. I will give them that much.
There's some shortcomings to this movie, but I will say that one of the both the series and the movie itself, I think they were really good with dialogue.
Yes,
especially showing
dialogue.
those two together. It would be good for, if you're writing, to do a study on this for dialogue. So how do you handle good dialogue? I think it's a good example. They used, it was an honor shame culture with the guy that's coming after him. What is, okay, you've got a name for him here. Let me plop up the.
Did he?
Well,
the assassin.
The operative.
Okay, that's right.
The operative. When he comes after them, he represents this rather rigid government style that they say that honor shame culture is a part of it. For them, love is dangerous. That was something that was mentioned, and that kind of forced Mal and his crew into this sort of gray moral area of being bandits because they had this oppressive government.
So the operative had very, very strong beliefs without having the reason why behind it.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Like, and where Malcolm had a lot of reasons why they needed to rebel against the Alliance, but he didn't really believe anything. And so I think that kind of contrast
very good
played really well.
Very good. That's why you're here. That's why you're here. That's insight. No, seriously, that's some good insight.
Thank you.
So the contrasting those two characters.
Yes.
And the way that you have an antagonist with your protagonist is either he challenges your protagonist.
Yes, absolutely,
right?
In every way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And especially gouges at whatever flaw that the protagonist has in order for there to be growth.
Sure.
Involved.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but that's a good way to handle it.
Yeah. And I think this was really exemplified in that conversation when he's talking to him on the comms after he essentially came in and killed that village that they where Booker was at. They had it Malcolm was like, why in the world would you do this? Like you think you're righteous? Is no, I don't. I believe in this cause, but I'm not worthy of being in this new world that we're creating because I have been corrupted. But it's a means to an end. He's all about the means to an end. He needs to kind of accomplish this goal because it's going to make something better in the long run, even if he has to go about it with evil means. So when he said by murdering children, he's like, yeah, I need to murder children. This is all for the greater good in the end. Wow. And I don't want to know why. I just know that I believe in this cause. Where Malcolm, what do you believe in? He's like, I don't know what I believe in, but I just want to be free. But
so I want to point something out. This is pretty typical of sci-fi, and I think that's why, from a Christian or a church perspective, sci-fi gets a bad name, and I think it's deserving so in some cases.
Yeah.
And that is, look at this. Whenever they paint these worlds, generally it's a world without God, or at least a world without Christian God. You can look at Dune. We did a review on religion in Dune and things like that, and asking out the Fremen Muslim and things like that. But in this worldview that they've painted, they've created without Yahweh involved in it, is that there are psychics. So there's touching the spiritual realm a little bit and stuff like that. I don't believe in psychics. That's not part of the Bible. Oh. There are psychics, but there is no God. There is no real foundation for morals. You have the Alliance, but really, what are they basing their morals on? Of course, you have the Reavers, and there's no morals involved with them.
Sure.
And then Mal doesn't have any morals, basically, other than maybe kind of do the good thing for people.
Yeah, his general traits that he's trying to forward freedom and
right.
Yeah.
So you have a sense of the spiritual realm, but without a creator.
Sure.
All these things that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think that as Christians, we could put a little bit of a different spin on this and ask them moral questions. What would this have been like if there was God involved? We have Judeo-Christian ethics that are at the foundation of these societies and so forth. How would things have changed? So that's one question that can be asked with this.
Yeah.
We're going to get another trailer here, but before we do, let's see. There's some chat in back and forth. I'm just checking this real quick.
Wookiee or something?
Yes, that was Wookiee speak. Okay. I think that's just chat within the group itself.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we hit it. Okay, so another trailer here then. And looking at, I think we have not done this one
The
yet.
Alliance has gone to enormous trouble to find you, friend. You'll know what it is you're carrying. You know that girl?
She is a mite unpredictable. Mood swings of a sort.
It's worse than you know.
It usually is.
So this is introducing now. She's not introduced, but this is when River Tam just like clicks, and you find out that she has basically been programmed as this war machine type of thing. And there's some trigger codes for going, and she doesn't necessarily have control over it. This is what I think was also a weakness, another weakness in the story, is that eventually at the end, she does get control over this and is able to save the crew.
Sure.
But there's never any real shown. It would have been much better if they showed her internal battle instead of just being triggered by whatever the enemy was using to get her to go to say, I need to overcome this to be able to consciously do it. Just at the end, she consciously decides, I need to save everybody.
My brother,
it's like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
There was no control that she had earlier.
I think her character development is probably the weakest, but I think they were in a weird spot where they made her so sporadic and out of control. And like the government did so many weird things with her brain that it was hard to have like a very linear like growth. Maybe I think that's they're out at least. You know,
I disagree. I think I would have written it so that her brother and her are working on it, and there's some thing there, maybe love or something that would be able to break that bond or the control, the programming that she had there. And then she'd be able to use that.
Yeah, I think you could have rewritten it in that sense. I do think they wanted the story to be more about Malcolm and his kind of journey.
Yeah, but that was, but with her battle at the end, that was what did it, right?
That's what saved the crew in that regards. But I would almost say that was like a subplot to getting the message out of what the Reavers were. That's kind of what turned out to be the main thing, and she was connected to that. She was kind of like the bridge to kind of get them to that location to realize what the government had kind of done. And I think that was a good representation of like this government is being oppressive. Like, well, how is it being oppressive? Is it taxing us? Is it just trying to impose its like governors on us? Like, well, a little bit more than that. In fact, they try to experiment on an entire world how to subdue them into being better citizens, which is an interesting concept. It kind of came in late, I think, for that thought to get fully like developed and flushed out. But she almost got them there. She was a product of them and their other experimentation. We got to see another side of it, and it was a good reflection. But it kind of jumped a little bit in terms of what the overall like purpose or the plot points were in that regards. But the characters drove it in the end, and you just kind of had to rush some of these plot points. I think this could have been done in a couple movies.
I think there was enough time that you could have done
and hit all the plot points too, you think? I think they could have cut back on some of the plot points.
Yeah.
Or at least make it into 2 movies, but they wouldn't have been able to do that.
I don't think so. Jason Bourne in space. Yeah, that was a bit of what you saw.
The sleeper agent.
Now, again, unless she is something with her body, because it's a smaller body and it's not as muscular.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, live, this is another strong female character.
They could have injected her with all kinds of different but you would get a larger bones. Yeah, you could get stronger bones, but even that, like the muscle density was not there.
Now, we just did a review on Alita Battle Angel.
Oh yes, I've seen that one.
That did make sense
because she was a robot.
Not only a robot, but she was using technology from a different place. She was using Martian technology, because Martian technology was supposed to be a step above everybody else.
Oh sure. Yeah.
So even if you have bigger, bulkier, stronger robots, she could still take them out.
Because and she had really big eyes too.
Yes, she did.
Yeah. Really big eyes.
That's what did it. No,
like Pixar
eyes. That was another one. Jason Bourne in space, and we've got trying to do the right thing in a world with gray moral choices. Booyah! That's a good one, because are we kind of living in that world right now? Is that kind of what's going on with the gray moral? Because you don't have a moral foundation like you would have maybe 150 years ago. You know, there were problems with the world then, with what was going on. Not everything was good. We had slavery in the U.S. and around the world. So there was all sorts of issues that were going on at the time. But you still had a general moral foundation. When you have a lot of gray area choices, and it's your truth that we listen to, your morality. We can't even tell if what a woman is anymore. So all these things, how do you live in a world of gray moral choices? That's hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
there, I think.
And in this movie, we kind of see two different sides of it, but I don't think either side is a perfect representation of like Christ. It's more, I think one could make the argument it was more like an extreme like conservative or extreme liberal, or maybe like fascist versus communist, you know, like these different kind of like worldviews kind of infused in kind of this story. And a lot of times the world does kind of divide between these like lines. Like right now, what we're seeing in the country, it's interesting seeing over the course of history what lines, what sides we kind of tend to fall in or kind of divide ourselves in. And they usually have reflections of each other in terms of values. They're just extreme. But then like the Christ and the Christian worldview is like generally, you know, a combination of both, or at least has certain values of both sides that neither kind of quite, you know, nail down. Because I think with these characters, they had a sense of like freedom and liberty. They didn't want the government experimenting on people and turning them into zombies, but at the same time, they didn't have this sense of like structure and law abiding and like safety and justice, like that you would hope that someone would. They kind of took things into their own hands. And then ultimately they were like the judge and executioner, you know, judge, jury, executioner, all right there, which there was just no checks in terms of how they acted.
So Jack Ray mentioned, it said, I made a character like her in a Star Wars
RPG game. Okay.
RPG game I mastered in 1998. I based the character X-Men Wolverine, but it was a hidden thing until that appeared once. He was actually a comic relief character. I can't imagine Wolverine as a comic relief character. But, yeah, more power to you. You say you made
an
character?
RPG, yeah, like a character in like a role.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Okay, I got you.
Okay.
This is not like I was thinking at first he was programming, but he wasn't. He just
RPG
game developer. Crap hit the fan in a mission story that was like Event Horizon. It triggered the character's physical machine like. So that was
like
what
that sleep
the trigger
type
was.
thing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's questions whether the bad guy here, though, the guy that's chasing him, he is, like you said, he is a believer.
Yes.
And that's where his strength was. Now, am I right in saying when it came to Mal, who is not a believer, who's a fly by the seat of his pants, who whatever came up today, whatever seemed like the right thing to do, he'd do it. He became a believer in the end.
He had to, and like Booker kind of like alluded to that when he like talked to them, which is an interesting subject because like he was like, oh, another sermon is like, why do you always think when I talk about belief it's about God? I'm like, come on, preacher man, like you're kind of abandoning your like, but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, like he essentially saw that Malcolm just lacked belief or conviction. Like, well, he had conviction. He just didn't he wasn't able to like display it in a consistent way. He just had more of a general idea. And so he didn't have anything solid to believe in. And he had to kind of, in the end, to believe in something. And I do think what made him believe was a little bit of a leap. I do think that whole thing where, all right, we're going to take the corpses of our friends and put them all over our ship in order to get through Weaver. I'm just like, okay, like, why do you feel so compelled to get to this planet?
Yeah.
You don't know what's there. You don't, like, maybe if you knew what was at that planet already and that there were these people. Yeah, but he was just like, no, like, they killed all our friends. You know what? Let's just go to this planet anyways. I'm kind of like...
So I'm gonna throw something out to you guys. You mentioned it here just a minute ago, and this is something that Booker, who was the shepherd or the pastor in this, is supposedly Christian, but it very what would you call him? A liberal or left-leaning pastor, not believing in
just more like spiritual, general,
all roads lead to God type of thing. He mentioned, he said, I don't care what you believe, talking to Mal.
Sure.
He said, I don't care what you believe, just believe.
Yeah, or believe in yourself. I don't know.
You don't have to believe in God, but just believe in something.
Yeah.
So here we go. Here's my question. Is belief, faith, trust, those words are all wrapped together. And some people say, well, faith is just about, I get an argument with people about this. Faith has something to do with religion. No, it doesn't. Faith has, because if you're unfaithful to your wife, that's not necessarily a religious thing. That's because she doesn't trust you anymore. You become untrustworthy. Okay, so faith, trust, believe. Does it matter what you have trust and faith in? Or is it just the act of believing in something, whatever the deal is?
Well, I think we all believe in something. Like everyone believes in something to a degree. That's what gets them up in the morning. But usually those beliefs are pretty scanty, pretty shakable in a lot of ways.
Right.
And so when Booker says just believe in something, until that fails, until what end? Just to mean to an end? Does he need to believe in something to accomplish a goal? Like, what's the point in believing in something just for the sake of believing?
Whatever you believe in, whatever you trust, some things fail and some things are better at not failing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to believe in the thing that's not going to fail you than
sure. It has long lasting, like everlasting, ramifications, as opposed to just like, I believe in this mission so I can complete this mission. And then what happens after that? It's just you need something bigger than your current circumstances to kind of like ground you.
Okay, so I put that out to the chat, see what we get as a response. So Jack Ray said, yes, we must stand on our belief in Christ, otherwise it's just follow. So the difference here is, like trusting in this, you're putting your house on, I built my house. I'm trusting that I built my house is going to work and everything, but I built it on sand. Or you're going to build it on the rock. Right? Mm-hmm. Difference there. You're a fool if you trust in the wrong thing.
Sure. And so I also want to say, like, it's good. I think you have minor beliefs on top of your major belief. Because, like, even when we're at work, we need to believe in the project we're working on, just to a certain degree. But that can't be, like, your foundational belief. So maybe what Booker was trying to say was like, you need to believe something in order to kind of like figure out this thing with River, and then it just didn't maybe, but afterwards. What else did he have to believe in? He was done after that.
No, I don't think it's because he usually believes in something, believe in the mission, believe in the task ahead of you. I think this is coming from a pastor or somebody who's supposed to be a pastor.
Yeah,
belief in God. He says, no, you can replace your belief in God. It doesn't really matter. Just believe in something in general. The Truth Defenders, I think, had a good point here. So faith is only as good as that which you put in it. If one trusts in a potato, that has its limits. I would agree. Potato.
Potatoes.
And he said, the object of faith is important. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If, definitely 100%. Some beliefs have their faithful creative hell on earth. Their faithful create hell on earth.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You can have horrific beliefs that like cause evil and suffering. Like belief in itself is just not a good thing. You know what I mean? And I think that this movie tried to portray it like Malcolm just needed to believe in something to kind of ground him in some capacity. It turned out to be, like a good thing in the sense that like he got the message out there, but like he didn't even know that was his mission like when he went on it. I don't know what made him take on that mission to go to, through Weaver territory and desecrate the bodies, and like all the crew members were like, what, we're not going to do this. And you're like, well, if you're not going to do it, get off my crew. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. That felt like some plot armor in that regard. So.
I think you're 100% right. That was all plot armor. Petra album, Beyond Belief, 1990, song I'm on the right. I might know this one too.
Kind of sounds familiar.
I
bet they did some remakes of that.
Love Petra. We used to jam it, and as we drive up California with our Mustang, my dad's Mustang T-top, and take the T-tops off and drive up the coast, listen to Petra. So that's a good one.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you feel like Malcolm or the Operative was closer in terms of a faith walk in their attitude and their demeanor?
Well, I think that the Operative shows what it's like to have faith. He didn't care what it was.
Yeah.
He just went with whatever he was.
I saw the Operative as almost like a devout believer. And it could have been in the Christian sense. Like he could have had that faith, and that he didn't. But like that's kind of same zeal, and even kind of how he talked. Well, now he did kill people, but just how he kind of explained things is very poetic. It was very like he was in control, and that's almost like how we're called to act in certain ways. He didn't let people get him riled up. He was strong in his belief and his convictions, and he didn't let people kind of like bully him around and kind of like tease him into like dropping this. But like it's almost as if like he believed in some type of religion, but then at the end, someone showed him that his religion was debunked. And then that was like, well, I guess my my belief was ill-founded, but it was so strong in that regards. And I guess for a Christian, like the problem, or I guess the warning in that is like, what if a Christian is so strong in their belief, but they don't understand it completely, and then like someone they go to college, someone comes along, it's like, actually, did you know this about Christianity? And they show them this video, and they're like, oh, then their faith is kind of shaking because they never got to like harden their beliefs with like with logic and understanding, which I think Christ calls us to do. I don't think he calls us to blindly believe, but the same that way, I do kind of envy the Operatives just like willingness to kind of like persevere and like do what he needs to do, in order to kind of like fulfill his mission. That he
said, this is a quote from the Operative, "I believe in something greater than myself, a world without sin. I am a monster, evil. I must do what must be done." And he believed himself as an catalyst for change, and evil was needed to get us to the point of good.
And that's so you started falling away there. But there is a certain sense of like, I believe, I'm a sinner, like I have fallen short. But in this case, is God has allowed me to kind of cooperatively work with him through his redemption on the cross. And that is what has given me that ability to work with him. Otherwise, it'll all be filthy rags otherwise. So there's some interesting reflections in there about what a Christian faith would look like with a couple of tweaks, but those tweaks are so important.
Yes, huge. So it does make a difference. Okay, so we do have another one that's coming up here too, and this would be the last, I believe. No, we got two more.
The alliance has gone to enormous.
Okay, one more.
This is going to get pretty interesting.
Define interesting.
Oh God, we're all going to die?
I want to resolve this like civilized men. I'm not threatening you. I'm unarmed. Good.
Okay, so as far as the characters go, I would say probably one of my favorite characters was Wash, who was the guy who was talking about, we're all going to die. Does that one line? There's some really witty humor that's in there that I think.
He was the comic relief. at the helm, kind of like, I'm gonna leave on the wind, you know, like just these kind of goofy things to kind of lighten up the tension at the moment.
And we've seen him play in other roles in sci-fi.
Sure.
Do you remember which ones that he might?
Well,
have
he
been?
voiced in Rogue One.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was a robot in Rogue One.
Yes, which we're gonna do.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
2 days.
Okay. And there were some other things that I'm missing at the moment.
iRobot.
Oh, he was the voice of Sonny.
I'm pretty sure he was Sonny. Yes. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm like 90% sure that it's him.
Okay.
And he was also in Knight's Tale. He was.
That's
remember that?
right. One of the Squires. Or
one of
something?
yes, one of the Squires in the Knight's Tale, which was not a sci-fi, but also an interesting.
Yeah.
Really bad as far as the history goes, getting the history right, but an enjoyable film anyway. Okay, so that was good. We see the Reavers coming. We got the contrast and stuff like that. So now I want to turn it to thematic review. This is the best part of our review, and we save it for last. And we asked, are there any Christian themes in this movie that can be used to deliver a message of instruction or hope to a dying world? Ryan, what did you see? Did you, first of all, sometimes you can look at these movies and say, look, there's really nothing here.
Yeah.
But sometimes, very rarely, what would you say is a Christian theme?
Yeah. And we kind of started talking about that kind of towards the end there, like how these two characters are almost like incomplete versions of like a coin. On either side of a coin, incomplete in terms they get certain aspects of the Christian faith right.
You're talking about Mal
and the Operative. Yeah.
Okay.
How they both kind of represent good elements of the Christian faith, but
incomplete.
Right. Very, very much so incomplete. And so I think that the conversation is like, well, what is it about Mal that like he has something that is representing of Christ? Because I do think there are things in there where he really cared for his crew. He really had a sense of he just wanted people to have a certain like freedom and away from the oppression. And I think that he cared for them, even if he kind of gave off this like kind of tough guy persona. And I think Christ is also wanting us to be free in this world of oppression. And kind of like has more of a sense of like, hey, I'm here with you. Like, and I think Mal really does that. Like, I'm here for you. I got you. I know there's crazy stuff out there. There's people that are trying to kind of like take advantage of you, but I'm here with you in a much more personal, intimate kind of setting. Very, very relational in that regards. But in terms of knowing what is right and wrong, he just like he flounders. You know, he just doesn't have that compass that's steady. Where like you can say the Operative did have a steady compass. It was pointing the wrong direction, but it was a sense of like conviction and steadfastness.
So if you took the Operative's sense of conviction, and married it more to what Mal's drive is,
sure,
you would have had a clearer picture.
I think
although
so.
Not really complete, it would have been a better picture.
It would have been a better picture, and
Okay.
I think those elements they explore in this movie were a good kind of like launching point as to kind of like what are the things in the Christian faith that we're supposed to exemplify in terms of reflecting Christ.
One thing I want to point out a little bit, that's a really good insight, I think. I don't want to gloss over.
Oh, no, you're good. Thank you.
One thing I want to point out too is that we're looking at a lot of this is like it was a fight against oppression. There's a mistake that a lot of Christian churches, especially mainline churches, are making right now in saying that, well, it's a church's job to help fight against oppression in the world. I think as Christians, we should help do that. However, the biggest oppression that we have in the world is the world itself, is the sin nature that we have, the oppression of sin itself. Jesus came not to free the Jewish people from the Roman Empire. That would have been the point of oppression, right? He would have led a rebellion or at least a reform project, right? He would have raised the money. He would have negotiated with the Romans. He would have set up more freedoms for his people, and then maybe try to move that towards Rome to do the same thing in Rome. That's the picture that some liberation theology would use for that. But Jesus did not come for that. And he didn't die as a good example. He died to pay the penalty for sin, to release us from our greatest oppressor, which is sin itself, the sin nature.
Yeah.
Above all.
And I think to piggyback that off into the movie, it would almost be as if like Mal is fighting against the Alliance tooth and nail, where Christ gave up, his life up to the Alliance, essentially.
Ooh.
I know. Yeah. There's some interesting, I don't know if it's a perfect kind of represent, but like, I think that's a little bit of the difference where Mal was still trying to fight it. And I think that's what the Jewish people wanted. They wanted someone like Mal to kind of come in and like, yeah, those people are oppressive. We got to like take them down a couple pegs and I need to rule like this.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not. I don't want to necessarily put you on the spot. A lot of people aren't, because this is not a part of history that you see in the Bible, because it's during the intertestamental period. But are you aware that this did happen for the Jewish people?
That there were people that
rose up against the oppressive occupying force, just like Rome.
Okay. I think I was aware of that to a certain degree, but maybe not.
This is the Ptolemies, which were the leftover from Alexander the Great. Okay, when he swept out east, and part of what he took over was the Persian Empire, which Israel was underneath the thumb of the Persian Empire at the time. He conquered the Persian Empire, went down and conquered Egypt, but when he died suddenly and at an early age, his 4 generals took over, and they were called the Ptolemies. And one of those sections was over Israel. So there was a lot of Hellenistic Greek influence that was on the time, right? And the Jews were fighting against, because they're against that culture. They're saying we need to have our own culture established here. And there was a revolt that happened there. The leader was the Maccabean. There was a Maccabean revolt.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Do you know the name of the person Maccabean was associated with it? But the guy's name specifically, the Maccabean revolt.
Oh, I do not. No.
Judas.
Oh, interesting.
So having the name Judas during the 1st century in
that
Judea,
would have been like a great.
It would have been a good name. It wouldn't be like,
there was
I
a
named
number
my
of people.
child Hitler.
Yeah.
Or Adolf.
Yeah,
okay?
Isn't it weird that we don't hear many Judases nowadays?
No, except maybe in rock bands. So that was really.
Oh,
so I'm going to look at a couple of the comments here before I do my theme, and that is Josh Whedon. This is from Jack Ray. He said Josh Whedon stuff like Angel and Firefly stuff always felt like it had a huge God-shaped hole in it. Form without substance. That's an interesting.
Well, so Joss Whedon has a very interesting history, and we talked about this a little bit before. But he would definitely not consider himself a Christian, but he had a certain fascination with the theme, and you saw this with the Justice League as well, like the Superman kind of being a Christ-like figure. So he's drawn to it in this unique way, for storytelling purposes. And I think that there's a figure there that he finds fascinating, but does kind of skirt around it in a sense that, like, yeah, it's not Christ, but we're drawn to something like this, but it's not Christ. He's just kind of another historical figure. So I don't want to be that crazy. But.
So it's interesting that you bring this up, because we did a review on this a little bit earlier, or a few months ago, about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien both talked about true myth.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And that is this idea of mythos, this story, this embedded story, and almost Jungian type of idea, where we have this hunger for this certain type of hero, and that hero is God.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Josh Whedon is like, he's missing it, where C.S. Lewis nails it, maybe like with Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and different things like that. So I'm wondering if you guys would agree with me on that one. We also have, and follow up to that, leaves an empty feeling, because it's just close, but not quite. Close, but not quite. Thomas Hall said, Old Testament, probably Proverbs or Ecclesiastes, advises rulers not to be tyrants. You're tempting your citizens to steal. That's what happened in this movie with they're bandits because they're at the point of, I don't know, desperation. Right?
Sure.
They really are painted it back into this corner.
Yeah. So they feel like there's no other route to go.
I would disagree, but
I'm
not in his shoes. Maybe if I was that desperate, I would do the same
It does make
thing.
for interesting stories, though.
It does. Jack Ray agree with Thomas Hall. Communist ideology in practice, example, the USSR breeds theft in humans through its tyranny. And you got to watch it. I think C.S. Lewis said that the worst tyranny are those brought by people who think they're doing everybody else a favor. Basically, that's not his words, but it's like, oh, we should do this because this is the best for you, and that ends up being tyranny.
There's this altruistic kind of mindset where like there's this much stronger sense of belief or conviction that they have how they execute. Sure.
Yeah. Truth Defenders said the Book of Jude is actually Judas in the Greek. Yeah. So the translators probably did not want to always explain it wasn't Judas the traitor. Yeah. So Judea is after Judah, named after Judah.
Okay.
Judea, the land it wasn't Palestine. The name Palestine came later as an insult to the Jews by the Romans after 70 AD, after the rebellion that the Jews had made. They said, oh yeah, boom, here you go. Philistia, Palestine, it's going to be named that. Judea, the name Judea, do you know where the name Judea came from other than Judah?
Yeah, the dude Judah, one of the brothers.
Because of the history of Israel, the 10 tribes in the north, when they had the civil war and they split between the 10 tribes in the north and the 2 tribes in the south, and the Assyrian Empire overtook the 10 tribes, and then Israel, which is called Israel, and then Judea was in the south because there was only 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin. Benjamin was a smaller tribe. Judah was like 10 times the size or something like that. So that became Judea, and that was the land that was known during the Roman Empire.
Okay.
Time too.
Yeah, I know you guys are so much more knowledgeable on the history and stuff, and I'm always very humbled. I need to learn a lot more of the history of the. I
didn't mean to say
the Middle East. No. I'm doing it as a compliment.
Okay.
I really do find that stuff fascinating. I just have not had as much time to look into that.
So I think as Christians, especially when you in order to interpret the Bible well, I think you need to maybe not as much as the language, although learning Greek and Hebrew is helpful. It's more learning the culture and understanding where the culture comes
and there's
from.
so many fascinating stories in there. There really are, even just from a storytelling point of view. Like there's a lot there. It can be a little overwhelming sometimes, I think, or sometimes kind of gets lost in all the history and other languages that kind of gets translated to where we are. But no, there's a lot of really neat stuff there, and I wish I was.
Well, we're all in the process of learning that too. So, as I think as Christians, we should be studying.
Yeah.
And learning more as we go. And there's all sorts of great resources. Translators probably context. Is renamed after the rebellion. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was renamed after 70 AD. I got corrected here. The land of Judea was renamed after the rebellion in 136 AD.
Good thing your brother in Christ is still here.
Yes.
Even though he's not here.
Yes.
He's still here.
open to correction and rebuke and sit in the corner, son, because you don't know nothing. Okay. So the theme that I would bring is resisting an evil world by trusting the truth. In a lot of these movies, you have themes like always fighting good against evil and stuff like that. But I think what makes this movie, Serenity, a little bit unique is saying we're resisting an evil world by trusting in the truth. And the truth is what they discovered. It was the process of what you found out about where the reavers came from was because of government's experimentations and things like that. But a unique theme in Serenity is this: resisting evil in the world by trusting the truth, particularly in the idea that belief in truth, not just belief in general, but belief in truth requires action even against overwhelming powers. We're often, especially as Protestants, it's salvation by faith, but then that faith then takes legs and it does something. And in this case, exemplified by this story, these people were willing to lay down their lives to be able to get the truth out. While many films deal with good versus evil and personal redemption, Serenity focuses on the notion that uncovering and standing by the truth can be a rebellious act of faith. The core conflict centers on the crew's discovery of a terrible truth about the Reavers and the Alliance's role in their creation. This truth is dangerous because it undermines the false peace and control the Alliance has imposed on the universe. That sets Serenity apart from this in their fight is not just physical, but it's also moral. So the combination of moral resistance to evil and belief in truth and as a liberating force typifies Serenity as a way that distinguishes it from other science fiction films and gives us this view in Christianity. How are we to go out and spread the truth? Matthew 28:19-20. Therefore, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Ephesians 6:12 says how we do this fight. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. Booyah.
So no Reavers?
Spiritual Reavers.
Spiritual Reavers?
Spiritual.
That sounds worse. That sounds much worse.
Yeah, instead of coming for your brain, they're coming for your soul.
Oh, no.
That's true.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Right? Not just the brain. What is the soul? Mind, will, and emotions. So when you get down to it, yes, just as Mal and his band of misfits were willing to die for truth that would liberate humanity, so we as believers are called to share the truth as we war against the authorities of darkness in the spiritual realm. Any last comments?
No, I'm glad we got to put a bow on this one. We were thinking about doing the whole series, but that would have been a lot for the TV. And I'm glad they made this movie to kind of like tie the story together, and we got to see how these characters like mirrored against the antagonist. How well that kind of like.
I think it did a good job.
It brought out their flaws and their strengths in an interesting way. It wasn't the perfect execution and had some plot armor and different stuff like that, but it was enjoyable, and glad we got to review it.
Yeah. I'm glad you know what? This guy, he knows his stuff, and he's got some good insights on writing and brings it forth. And so I'm glad we've been able to have this, and you guys too, bring in your insights. It's always, you guys always open my mind to things like this. And I got the rebellion date wrong. To your brother in Christ. So that's good. We have coming up next Tuesday, we mentioned it before, but we're going to be doing a movie review, and I'm going to be joined by Jono from the Crusader Culture Crusader to review Rogue One. So I was asked by somebody in another interview this afternoon, just before we did this one. He says, have you done much on Star Wars? No, we haven't. We might just start delving into that a little bit. We did Acolyte. We did some others coming up. So this is going to be fun. I think this might be the only good one that came out of Disney Star Wars.
Well, it was such a neat kind of like hopeful, like, oh, okay, they got this. They got like it brought some hope in for the next three movies that were coming out, and So it was like kind of the last the last light in what was a very disappointing
with Star Wars.
Yeah,
yeah.
It would be interesting, and I could talk about Star Wars with you for a while, and obviously not now, but like there's a lot of neat stuff there to talk about. So maybe I'll hop in for some of those.
Oh yeah. You guys think we should have him back? Let me know. I think the thumbs is going to be thumbs up. I think Ryan brings some good insight. And thank you again, guys, for all that you do. And we will see you next time.
Until next time, legends.